The darkness in front of them quickly faded away. When they reappeared, they were already in Realm in Valley. Xiaoyan looked over and saw that everyone had already come out. He and Wu Shaoqi were the last to come out. "What are you two doing? Why did you come out so late?" When he saw Xiaoyan and Wu Shaoqi coming out, Su Ziyang felt relieved in his heart. Then, he said with a cold expression, "In order to wait for you, the few elders' origin cheese were all used up." They almost couldn't hold on any longer. Elder Wei was even more exhausted. Wu Shaoqi twitched her mouth and didn't say anything. Xiaoyan looked at Elder Wei, who was standing not far away. The latter was supported by a few elders and fell to the ground with great effort. When he saw Xiaoyan, he forced a smile on his face. "All right, this year's trip to the illusory spirit space is over. No matter what the harvest is, you must cultivate well. Next year is the year that decides the fate of the academy. You all should take care of yourselves." Waving his sleeve, Su Ziyang gave Xiaoyan and the others a cold glance, then he leapt up and left. The other elders didn't have much to say, so they followed Elder Su and left. After the elders left, the rest of the students returned to their heavenly peak without saying a word. They knew how serious the 4 academies competition would be next year. Naturally, they wanted to showcase their skills on the grander stage of the realm in Valley. "Xiaoyan, what are you going to do next?" Wu Shaoqi took a closer look at Xiaoyan and saw that his strength had not improved at all. She asked curiously. Xiaoyan had entered a place with rich illusory spirit spaces in the illusory spirit space, but he had not made any progress in the past few days, which surprised her. "Let's go out and take a look at Xuan'er and Kai Lin. After that, we will go into seclusion. I don't know how long it will take." After considering for a while, Xiaoyan said softly. If he wanted to enter the illusory spirit space, he didn't know how long it would take. This time, he had to wait for refining monarch Hai Tianyan to recover no matter what. He nodded. Wu Shaoqi said, "Elder Su has gotten a pretty good harvest. Since we are getting closer to the 4 academies competition, I won't disturb you any longer. I will also start my seclusion and strive to improve my strength." As she spoke, he chuckled and pretended to be experienced as he patted Xiaoyan's shoulder. After which, his body flashed and he flew towards the distant heavenly peak. Xiaoyan gently exhaled a breath of air. He did not stay any longer and directly rushed out of the realm in Valley. After obtaining the approval of the guarding elders, he entered the inner academy without any hindrance. He saw Xuan'er and Kai Lin in heavenly peak. They had not seen each other for more than 3 months. Xiaoyan and the 2 girls also warmed up for a moment. After finding out that Zhu Kun and Ji Yuan were safe, he told the 2 girls his thoughts and told them not to worry. After making all the arrangements, Xiaoyan entered the realm in Valley. The Xiaoao and refining monarch Hai Tianyan were both in that spatial zone, so he was still very worried. After entering the realm in Valley's own heavenly peak, Xiaoyan completely sealed off the mountain peak. After sending out the news that he was meditating, he sat on the stone bench and took out the dragon's soul bone once again. Forcibly holding back the thought of opening the white cloth and taking a look, Xiaoyan held the dragon's soul bone in his hand. The origin chi in his hand moved and wrapped around it. When the origin chi entered the dragon's soul bone, an endless scene of darkness suddenly appeared in Xiaoyan's mind. The darkness engulfed him, almost swallowing his will. Boom! In the next moment, the darkness in his mind suddenly split open. Xiaoyan felt as if his mind was about to explode. He broke out in cold sweat and opened his eyes in fear. Immediately, he saw a spatial crack slowly appearing in front of him. Even though the dragon's soul bone in his hand was wrapped by the white cloth, it still shone with a glaring black light. After hesitating for a moment, Xiaoyan stood up and slowly walked into the crack. If their guess was right, this crack was the passageway to the illusory spirit space. The darkness in front of him faded. Xiaoyan held the dragon's soul bone tightly. When he opened his eyes again, endless black fog emerged in front of him. Layers of fog isolated his vision. The majestic mountain peak in the distance was faintly visible, as if it was within his reach, but also as if it was out of reach. Swoosh! Before Xiaoyan could recover his senses, a whistling sound suddenly sounded. The sound of the wind came from behind. Xiaoyan subconsciously dodged to the side and easily dodged. "Oh Wu!" Hearing this angry voice, Xiaoyan turned around and looked at the source of the sound. It was a monster that slowly walked out of the fog. The monster had a ferocious face, and its body was covered in armor. It was full of strength. It really is the illusory spirit space. Seeing the familiar monster's appearance, Xiao Yan couldn't help but feel wild joy in his heart. Ever since he obtained the dragon's soul bone, almost all of his decisions had been made with gambling. His and the Xiaoao's crazy thoughts were indeed correct. The dragon's soul bone could indeed summon the illusory spirit space. Xiao Yan involuntarily parted his mouth and laughed when he thought of this. He looked at the monster that was charging over aggressively and directly kicked it. It was easily shattered and an emperor-grade origin bead rolled and landed on the ground. The Wu Yin meridian is over there again. The joy in his heart gradually calmed down. Xiao Yan looked around and could not help but fall into a daze. Illusory spirit space could be said to be endless. Without the guidance of the Xiaoao, he did not know when he would be able to find it by himself. I miscalculated. I should ask Wu Shaoqi for the map of the illusory spirit space. Xiao Yan knocked his head and said with regret. Suddenly, his expression changed. He held his breath and focused his mind. He used his consciousness to communicate with the blood source seed in his mind. That blood eye was in the Wu Yin meridian. He did not know if he could find it with this. What is it? Just as he communicated with the blood origin seed, a voice resounded in Xiao Yan's mind. It sounded rather lazy. That. I am lost. How do I get to the Wu Yin meridian? Xiao Yan's face twitched as he spoke in an embarrassed manner. You brat. Hearing Xiao Yan's words, the existence of the blood eye was obviously stunned. Then, it gritted its teeth and started to doubt whether this guy could help him refine a body. Follow my guidance. Just as it was speaking, the blood eye suddenly paused. After that, it said with astonishment, No, that's not right. How did you get in here? Xiao Yan was stunned when he heard this, but he quickly calmed down and ignored the question. We are about to hold the competition soon. There are more chances for us to enter the illusory spirit space. The elders have joined hands once again. The illusory spirit space has been opened. Hearing Xiao Yan's explanation, the existence of the bloody eye dispelled the doubts in his heart. He did not know much about the matters between the academies. He only knew that there would be different students coming in every year. He was used to this kind of thing. Not long after that, Xiao Yan felt that the blood source seed in his mind had a slight change. It seemed to be guiding him on a path. Following the direction of the blood source seed, Xiao Yan found the right direction and immediately flew into the distance. He was also surprised and bewildered in his heart. It seemed like this fellow had some vague knowledge that could summon the illusory spirit space. If he really knew that he had obtained the dragon's soul bone, he didn't know what kind of situation would occur. Following the guidance of the blood origin seed, it only took a moment. Xiao Yan once again arrived at the Wu Yin meridian. He had only been out for a day and had once again entered this place. It made Xiao Yan feel like he was in a dream. With the dragon's soul bone, he felt like he was in a dream. It could be said that he had mastered the illusory spirit space. Within a year, half of the time in the illusory spirit space was drifting in the spatial fault. During this period of time, he could cultivate as much as he wanted in this place, even if it was a student of the Star Sky Academy. He had only cultivated in the illusory spirit space for 3 months. When Xiao Yan stepped into the canyon, the blood eye was floating in the air. When it saw Xiao Yan, it let out a cold snort. Once again, it used up a large amount of its origin to send Xiao Yan into the spatial zone. As long as this guy could improve his strength as soon as possible, he could still bear the consumption. It was only a day after Xiao Yan left the spatial zone. When he entered the mysterious spatial zone once again, the Xiaoao still hadn't woken up. In the center of the origin chi vortex, the devilish blue water was still absorbing the boundless origin monarch chi, showing no signs of stopping. Seeing this, Xiao Yan didn't want to disturb him. He could only sit down cross-legged and enter into a state of quiet cultivation. In his heart, he repeatedly deduced the cultivation technique he had cultivated, using this to wear down the time. Sizzle sizzle. The origin monarch chi crazily surged towards the blue water droplet at the center of the vortex. The latter was like an emperor, as if it was receiving the worship of thousands of subjects. If one looked closely, one would discover that the surface of the blue water droplet already had some faint fiery light. It was no longer as weak as before. The Xiaoao's eyes were tightly shut by the side. Within its body, it had experienced the baptism of being reborn from the flames. Under the nourishment of the majestic dragon chi, the injuries in its origin slowly recovered. At the same time, its strength had also gradually recovered to its peak state, and everything was developing in a good direction. There was no concept of time in the mysterious space. 4 months passed by in the blink of an eye. During this period of time, Xiao Yan had only woken up 3 times. Every time he woke up, he would practice the monarch skill once. He would perform it according to his own wishes, continuously improving the thoughts in his heart. After that, he would once again enter a state of quiet cultivation. In the 5th month, the Xiaoao finally woke up. The moment it opened its eyes, a deep dragon roar seemed to be emitted from within its body, waking Xiao Yan up. The Xiaoao's body leapt and stood up. It stretched its waist, which it had not moved for a long time, and let out a lazy moan. It has recovered? Xiao Yan's heart moved when he saw the Xiaoao wake up in high spirits. He hurriedly asked. The Xiaoao smiled and nodded. The fatigue between its brows had disappeared, and what replaced it was endless vitality. I feel that my strength has increased a lot as well. The Xiaoao jumped up and down on the spot with a smile on its face. The dragon chi contained within the dragon soul bone had completely healed his origin injuries. It had been a long time since he had experienced this kind of comfortable feeling that penetrated deep into his soul. Seeing that the Xiaoao had fully recovered, Xiao Yan heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. He was also quite happy in his heart. This matter that he had been worrying about for over a year had finally produced the best result. That monarch flame hasn't recovered yet? Turning his gaze to refining monarch Hai Tianyan, who was in the origin chi vortex in the distance, the Xiaoao said with a surprised expression. Who knows what will be done? Xiao Yan shook his head with a bitter smile. He had mixed feelings in his heart. What if this thing needed 3 to 5 years to recover? At that time, the 4 academies competition would be finished, and it would be too late. And he wouldn't be able to cultivate here. If refining monarch Hai Tianyan couldn't recover in time, his cultivation would also drop significantly. I can only wait. Sighing, Xiao Yan had no choice but to let the monarch flame recover in a place filled with origin cheese. He didn't know if his idea was right or wrong. The Xiaoao didn't know what to say when it saw this. It shrugged its shoulders and sat down on the ground like Xiao Yan did. It supported its cheeks with both hands and its big eyes rolled around. No one knew what it was thinking. This dragon soul bone can really enter the illusory spirit space. Looking at the shameless Xiaoao, Xiao Yan suddenly smiled and took out the dragon soul bone. Really? The Xiaoao was stunned for a moment, then it was overjoyed. So you went out and came in again. It's really good. You are so muddle-headed that you have mastered the summoning method of the illusory spirit space. Hee, this spatial zone was once the famous prison realm of the great world. Although it has declined, there are still many good things inside. When you have the strength in the future, you can take those things out. Xiaoao grinned. Clearly, he recalled the mountain-sized dried corpse of the giant dragon. That was a good thing. Xiao Yan shrugged and smiled when he heard this. The Xiaoao had said so. It was exactly what he was thinking in his heart. But now, the only way to quickly increase his strength was to devour refining monarch Hai Tianyan. If he couldn't devour refining monarch Hai Tianyan in front of the 4 academies competition, all his efforts over the past few days would be in vain. There are still 3 months left until the 4 academies competition. How's the preparation of the elders going? In the heaven pillar peak of the inner courtyard, at the highest seat, Elder Xiao's expression was solemn. His gaze swept across all the elders below. Su Ziyang expressionlessly sat down on Elder Xiao's seat, and a complicated expression could be seen in his eyes. We have almost finished our preparations. After all the elders have left, the safety of the academy can be guaranteed. They are only students of the realm in Valley. Elder Wu stood up first and nodded at Elder Xiao. After a moment of hesitation, he looked at Su Ziyang. The latter was the biggest manager of the realm in Valley. He was even more concerned about the matters of the 4 academies competition. In the past, he had personally chosen the participants, but this time, there was no news. Lin Dao and Wu Shaoqi can participate. After listening to Elder Wu's words, Su Ziyang said in a cold voice. Then, his fist suddenly smashed onto the table, causing cracks to appear on the red rock table that was as hard as iron. Xiao Yi is unable to participate. Xiao Yan and Zhu Tianhuo have yet to meet. He took a deep breath. Su Ziyang calmed down. His voice was filled with coldness, causing the hearts of everyone present to turn cold. What's wrong with Xiao Yi? Elder Xiao's facial expression changed as well, and he asked urgently. He knew Xiao Yi's strength very well, and he definitely had the strength to kill any monarch emperor. If he didn't have this combat strength, the Yunluo Academy would most likely die this time. After the Xiao clan sent a letter, Xiao Yi returned. I just received the news a few days ago. Clenching his teeth, Su Ziyang said in a deep voice. The monarch flame of the Xiao clan suddenly erupted. After Xiao Yi went back, he took the risk to devour it, and his origin was injured. Hearing Su Ziyang's words, all the elders looked at each other in dismay. They also knew that Xiao Yi wanted to obtain Zhu Tianhuo's sacred spirit fire body to increase the success rate of devouring the monarch flame. They never thought that the monarch flame would suddenly erupt. Xiao Yi had no choice but to devour it, and he ended up in such a state. Why is there no news about Xiao Yan? Elder Xiao had mixed feelings. He hadn't heard anything about Zhu Tianhuo for more than a year. Xiao Yi was seriously injured, and Xiao Yan was nowhere to be found. The series of events had almost driven him crazy. That bastard, he said that he was in a closed-door cultivation. I asked Elder Lu of the Elixir Association to inspect the heavenly peak with his soul, but he didn't find anyone. Su Ziyang was infuriated when he thought of Xiao Yan. Xiao Yi was seriously injured, so he could only place his hopes on Xiao Yan. He didn't expect that this guy would disappear just like that. How could this be? There was even a trace of sweat on Elder Xiao's forehead. This news was like a bolt out of the blue to them as the competition was approaching. We must find them. If any one of them gets hurt, we won't be able to afford it. Elder Xiao's expression was gloomy. His fist also smashed on the table, almost smashing it to pieces. He wanted to vent the anger in his heart. Swoosh! Xiao Yan let out a light breath. He felt the Origin Monarch Qi finally stop. His eyes suddenly turned towards the center of the Origin Qi vortex. There, a palm-sized flame was circulating like a blue wave. The sound of the surging waves kept coming out from within. It was as if thousands of waves were being stirred up. It was a terrifying scene. It's done. It's done. Xiao Yan's lips trembled. The excitement in his heart was incomparable. After waiting for so long, he had finally waited for the moment when the monarch flame matured. On the side, the Xiaoao finally let out a sigh of relief. It seemed like this boring day was finally coming to an end. These few days, Xiao Yan had persisted. He was almost unable to endure it any longer. Swoosh! Just like the 9 profound golden thunder from before, this wave of flame suddenly shook. As if it had sensed something, it rushed towards Xiao Yan, crazily devouring the crimson gold flame protecting Xiao Yan's body. Hey! Seeing refining monarch Hai Tianyan's action, Xiao Yan could not help but sneer. When the Chaos Great Monarch Flame swallowed the 9 profound golden thunder back then, the latter also wanted to devour the 9 profound golden thunder. After a fierce battle, it swallowed the 9 profound golden thunder. Now, refining monarch Hai Tianyan actually wanted to do the same. It seemed that swallowing one another was the nature of all monarch flames. Devour! Xiao Yan coldly cried out. He waved his hand and numerous crimson gold flames filled the sky. They were like a fire dragon that instantly wrapped around the blue waves. In the end, the blue waves were only refining monarch Hai Tianyans. A part of it, under the combination of the 3,000 lightning monarch flames and the chaos great monarch flame, even if his ranking was higher, he would still be completely devoured in the end. 2. The blue flame was like a huge wave that kept crashing into the crimson gold flame. It was like a huge dragon in the ocean, and the strength of its struggle was beyond Xiao Yan's imagination. This monarch flame is really powerful. I heard from Xiao Yan that this is only a part of it. Once it's completely devoured, its strength will increase even more. Looking at the surging 3-colored flame on Xiao Yan's body, the Xiaoao sat on the ground in boredom. Its eyes were constantly on Xiao Yan's body. That devilish blue flame was in a deadlock with the other 2 flames for a moment. Sizzle, sizzle. Under Xiao Yan's full control, the Chaos Great Monarch Flame and the 3,000 Lightning Monarch Flame were like 2 sharp spears, fiercely striking the blue flame at a strange and tricky angle. The Xiao Yi's figure also appeared from time to time, taking the opportunity to absorb a trace of the blue flame's power. Buzz. Not only did they not make any progress after half a day, a little of their energy was also devoured. The blue waves seemed to be furious, and in an instant, it turned into a huge wave that swallowed Xiao Yan. Every drop of water in the huge wave was a flame. Billions of drops of water formed into billions of flames that rushed towards Xiao Yan, who was in the huge wave, and in the next moment, there was no movement from him. Caught off guard by this scene, the Xiaoao's laziness immediately dissipated. It leapt up and nervously looked at the huge wave that had stopped moving in the distance. After all, it was a flame ranked 24th on the Monarch Flame. In terms of power alone, it far exceeded the Chaos Great Monarch Flame and the 3000 Lightning Monarch Flame. If it wasn't for Xiao Yan telling him not to interfere, he would have rushed forward to see what was going on. Within the huge wave, Xiao Yan's face was slightly pale. Both of his legs were trembling slightly. The crimson gold flame turned into a barrier and wrapped around him, blocking the pressure from the huge wave. A huge force came from all directions. Xiao Yan even felt a pain in his chest. Even so, Xiao Yan's eyes were filled with joy. This huge wave was refining Monarch High Tianyans. Part of it was far from mature. After devouring it, it would be nurtured by the other two Monarch Flames. Once it matured, its strength would definitely increase again. Furthermore, Xiao Yan could clearly feel the force of the huge wave gradually weakening. It was only a matter of time before it was completely devoured. The Xiaoao shared the same thoughts as Xiao Yan. It was only after it sensed that Xiao Yan was not injured did it relax. It sat back down on the ground and looked at the waves in the air, waiting for Xiao Yan to break out of the cocoon and become a butterfly. In the Heaven Pillar Peaks formation space, when Su Ziyang and Elder Xiao walked in with heavy expressions, Qi Bai and Elder Xiao had already woken up from their cultivation. When Qi Yun saw their ugly expressions, he let out a light sigh and said, "What? You still haven't found those two little fellows?" Elder Xiao shook his head with a bitter smile. Grandma Bai, who was standing beside him, also sighed helplessly. A few days ago, when she heard Elder Xiao report that Xiao Yan and Zhu Tianhuo had disappeared, she thought that they were going out to cultivate. However, since there were no traces of them until now, she had no choice but to suspect them. With their strength, ordinary low-grade heavenly beasts are no match for them. As for high-grade heavenly beasts, the Academy has already spoken to them beforehand. They are not allowed to attack the students. Qi Yun's white brows trembled as he spoke softly. His eyes were filled with doubt. The elders who were guarding the entrance of the Academy had also said that they had not seen the two of them leave. Where else could the two of them go? I think they have gone to the outer mountains of the Yunluo Academy. After hearing Qi Yun's analysis, Elder Xiao said in a deep voice. The outer mountains of the Academy were vast and boundless, and there was no lack of mysterious places. It was a place that none of these elders had set foot in. Elders, this is the list of the participants from the Star Sky Academy. Please take a look. Su Ziyang was obviously in a bad mood as well. He interrupted Elder Xiao's words, and with an ashen face, he walked forward and handed a bamboo slip to Qi Yun. The list of the participating students? Why do you have it? Receiving the bamboo slip from Su Ziyang, Qi Yun and Grandma Bai were shocked. This was a secret of each academy. How could it be leaked out in advance? The other two academies received this as well. The reason why Star Sky Academy dared to reveal this secret in advance is probably because of them. After saying that, a trace of coldness flashed across Su Ziyang's eyes. His deep voice resounded throughout the spatial zone of the formation. There's nothing to fear. Don't be afraid. Holding the bamboo slip, Qi Yun let out a cold laugh. His white eyebrows trembled as he opened the bamboo slip. On the bamboo slip, there were a lot of words. 5 people participating in the competition. Shi Kanghai, Sang Hao, Wu Tiandu, Sang Shoshan, Kang Feng. He read out the names of the 5 people and looked down. Qi Yun's hand that was holding the bamboo slip trembled. Ranked 5th in the academy, 6 Paths Monarch Emperor Shi Kanghai. His voice was trembling. Qi Yun's face was gloomy. No wonder the Star Sky Academy was so arrogant. They did have the right to be arrogant. This Shi Kanghai was a 6 Paths Monarch Emperor, but he was only ranked 5th. Clearly, these 5 were the top 5 experts of the Star Sky Academy. Mu Yuyang isn't even qualified to participate in the competition in the Star Sky Academy. Grandma Bai took the bamboo slip from Qi Yun's hand and looked at the content on it. She raised her head and said in shock. Su Ziyang's expression was cold, and he didn't say anything. He had thought that the Star Sky Academy might be very strong, but he didn't expect it to be so strong. The weakest participant had the strength of a 6-paths monarch emperor. Although the 4 academies competition had stipulated that the candidate was a 5-paths monarch emperor, all the academies had a tacit understanding. As long as the strongest person could reach the 5th monarch emperor, they would be able to enter the competition. As for the Star Sky Academy, on the surface, the overall strength of the Star Sky Academy had reached the 6th monarch emperor. Elder Su, this. Grandma Bai waved the bamboo slip in her hand and spoke in a deep voice. It seemed like it was impossible for the Yunluo Academy to obtain a good ranking. Clenching his fists tightly in his sleeves, Su Ziyang's face was cold and stern. After a long while, he spoke in a fierce voice. Even if I have to sacrifice my life, I will still fight with my life on the line. After he finished speaking, he turned around and left. Looking at Su Ziyang's back as he left, Qi Yun waved his hand and stopped Grandma Bai from calling him back. He sighed. I know Su Ziyang's personality. After all, I was his teacher. For the sake of the academy, this guy can really give up everything. After listening to Qi Yun's words, Grandma Bai opened her mouth and weakly nodded. In the end, she did not say anything. There are still more than 2 months before the 4 academies competition begins. We can wait for them for another month at most. I guess Su Ziyang is suffering more than us right now. Qi Yun mumbled to himself. For the first time, he had some empathy for his stubborn disciple. Elder Xiao was silent when he heard this. Right now, he was suffering as well. Boom! A huge impact came like a wave. Even though the space was filled with origin cheese, the Xiaoaos were still thrown to the ground. With a leap, the Xiaoao stood up from the ground. Its face was filled with joy as it looked into the distance. Its face was filled with heartfelt joy. After waiting for so long, it had finally recovered. The waves seemed to have evaporated, and the seawater turned into endless blue flames that rose into the sky. In the next moment, it quickly surged into Xiaoyan's body, and the water vapor dispersed, revealing Xiaoyan's appearance. The blue flame in his eyes flashed for a moment. Xiaoyan shook his head before he regained consciousness. When his eyes regained clarity, Xiaoyan suddenly clenched his fists. A force that was so powerful that it was almost impossible to control spontaneously arose. What a powerful strength! Xiaoyan lifted his brows. He waved his hand and a flame swiftly appeared. The flame was still a reddish gold color. However, it was like a wave that slowly flowed. Occasionally, a trace of a demonic blue would flash within the flame. The power of the monarch flame has also increased. Xiaoyan was delighted. He carefully sensed it and sure enough, the burning spell had improved tremendously. Although it had not reached the venerable level, it had far exceeded the emperor level. Monarch Emperor. The Xiaoao skipped over, and when it sensed Xiaoyan's current strength, it was also delighted. Swallowing the monarch flame was indeed the fastest way to increase one's strength. It had directly reached the monarch emperor from 5 emperors. This speed could almost be compared to Xiaoyan's. Xiaoyan was also delighted in his heart. To be able to reach monarch emperor in one go had exceeded his expectations. Although he had yet to condense an origin chains in his body, it was still much stronger compared to peak of monarch king. We can leave now. Xiaoyan suddenly clenched his 5 fingers, causing the origin chi in the spatial zone to rumble. He grinned and said, after spending nearly a year, he had finally paid back the price he had paid. 2 inches. There's still some time before the 4 academies competition arrives. After we get out of here, let's familiarize ourselves with our strength. It's time to settle the score with the Star Sky Academy. After saying that, Xiaoyan gently furrowed his brows. He was about to communicate with the blood source seed in his mind. You can use the dragon soul bone to get out of here. Seeing Xiaoyan's actions, the Xiaoao asked curiously. It should be possible, but I have a feeling that the guy from the Wuyan bloodline knows something. I had some doubts when I came in earlier. If I went out directly this time, it wouldn't be so easy to get through him once. Xiaoyan nodded and said in a deep voice. Currently, he was still somewhat afraid of the existence of the blood eye. The Xiaoao nodded its head after hearing what Xiaoyan said. Without saying anything else, it turned into a purple golden flame and entered Xiaoyan's body. Xiaoyan had successfully refining Monarch High Tianhuo. He still needed to go in and familiarize himself with this monarch flame so that he could control it well in future battles. It's done? Xiaoyan's mind had just connected with the blood source seed when a slightly surprised voice sounded in his mind. Clearly, He had also sensed that Xiao Yan was different from the previous changes. After pausing for a moment, this voice was wild with joy as it spoke. "Little fellow, you have become a monarch emperor?" Before Xiao Yan could reply, the blood essence seed had already been poured into the voice with wild joy. "Not bad, not bad. It wasn't in vain that I spent so much effort to become a monarch emperor. It's only a matter of time before I break through to the emperor cultivation." When he heard the joyful voice coming from the blood source seed, Xiao Yan said without batting an eyelid. "Senior, you flatter me. I'm going out now. I hope Senior can help me." Sure, sure." When he heard Xiao Yan's request, his voice did not hesitate for a moment. After a pause, he smiled and said, "There is still a little guy training here. To be safe, I will directly send you out of the Shaman Yin Meridian." "Someone is cultivating?" Xiao Yan was stunned for a moment, then he immediately reacted. Without much hesitation, he said, "No need, it's in the Wu Yin Meridian." "Whatever." The voice from the blood eye sounded indifferent. He was very concerned about Xiao Yan's emotions right now. If the guy who was cultivating outside saw what he shouldn't have seen, it would be very easy for him to get rid of it. Swoosh! An irresistible force came from nowhere. Xiao Yan disappeared into the mysterious space without any resistance. It was as if nothing had happened, and the place returned to its usual deathly silence. When Xiao Yan appeared out of thin air in the central plain of the valley, through the thick black fog, he saw a young man wearing a silver robe sitting cross-legged not far away. Facing the sea of blood, the young man had his back to Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan wasn't able to see the young man's face clearly. The moment he appeared, the crimson gold flame wrapped around Xiao Yan's body, and then his body moved. He had already hid in the depths of the black fog, causing the young man to be unable to detect him at all. "How long has this guy been here?" The monarch flame in his eyes flickered as he looked through the layers of black fog at the motionless young man. Xiao Yan asked in his heart, "I don't know. This kind of small character doesn't have any special power. Why would I care about him?" The voice of the blood eye echoed in his mind, and his tone was filled with disdain. Ever since Xiao Yan had entered that mysterious space, although the five elements origin seizing formation had extracted his origin chi to create a monster, his strength had become extremely weak, and he was no longer a threat to the young man in the silver robe in the distance. Xiao Yan's eyes sparkled, and his heart suddenly moved. He said in a soft voice, "Senior, please wake him up. I have something to ask him." "You're ordering me around?" Hearing this, the blood eye was dissatisfied and said in a cold voice, "Forget it if you're not willing to. I was planning to ask you something, and it might even increase my strength." Xiao Yan shrugged his shoulders and said indifferently. After listening to Xiao Yan's words, a cold snort came from the blood eye. Without saying anything else, in the next moment, the blood sea in the middle of the plain suddenly rose and condensed into a huge blood eye in the sky. As the blood and chi filled the air, the silver-robed youth was instantly awakened. "Kai!" The young man retreated rapidly. The movement of his body was like that of a shadow, causing Xiao Yan to be startled. Both of them were slightly startled. This speed seemed to be on par with Lin Dao's speed back then. The young man lifted his head after he withdrew to the edge of the canyon tunnel. His expression was grave as he looked at the blood eye in the distant sky. The origin chi around his body surged. He was prepared to unleash a thunderous attack at any time. The young man had a handsome face and his black hair was thick. His hair was spread wide, revealing a conspicuous scar on his forehead. In his eyes, there's an undispersed chill. Xiao Yan took a deep breath. The origin chi's voice was mixed with a strange tone as it spoke. "Who are you? How dare you barge into my forbidden land?" The young man was startled when he heard the strange voice coming from the blood eye. Then, his brows twitched. He cupped his fists and said respectfully, "I'm Sang Hao of Star Sky Academy. I don't know if Senior is cultivating here. If you have offended me, I will leave immediately." After saying that, he turned around and was about to leave. Xiao Yan was delighted when he saw this. He immediately said, "Impudent! This is a place where you can come and go as you please." The young man's face darkened after he turned around. He took a deep breath, turned around, and said with a smile, "Senior, please forgive my rudeness. Besides, with my abilities, I am far from qualified to disturb you." Seeing the young man being stopped, Xiao Yan didn't dawdle any longer. He pretended to snort coldly and said in a deep voice, "You said your name is Sang Hao. But you are from the Sang clan? Sang Hao was startled when he heard this. He nodded and said, "That's right. Does Senior know about the Sang clan?" Of course, he didn't know much about the Sang clan, but given the current situation, he could only make things up. "I do know some things. Before I fell, I heard that there are some extremely talented juniors in this clan. I know that the Sang clan will definitely prosper in the future." "How is it now?" Sang Hao felt a little joy in his heart when he heard the mysterious expert praise the Sang clan. He hurriedly said, "I would like to borrow Senior's auspicious words. My Sang clan is currently one of the 4 great families in the star domain. We can be considered a giant in the entire large world. Not bad, not bad. I never thought that the Sang clan would have such a talented junior like you." Xiao Yan could only follow along and pretend to be deep in thought. "Senior, you are flattering me. How could I dare to bear the word talent? I have a younger brother named Sang Shoshan. His strength is much stronger than mine." Pausing for a moment, a respectful expression emerged on Sang Hao's face. "The son of the current patriarch, who is also my elder brother, is called Sang Yu. He is truly talented, and his physique is known as the tyrannical heavenly king physique. Currently, his name has shaken the entire battle domain." Speaking of this brother of his, whether it was his expression or his tone, they all contained a strong sense of respect. Tyrant heavenly king physique? How is this possible? Before Xiao Yan could say anything, the Xiaoao in his body had already cried out in shock. It was obvious that it had received a huge shock. Not bad, not bad. The Sang clan really has a genius in their generation. After a few words of agreement, Xiao Yan's mind hurriedly entered his body. When he saw the Xiaoao's frightened expression, his face was filled with disbelief. "What's wrong? What is the tyrant heavenly king physique?" Xiao Yan's heart skipped a beat and he hurriedly asked. The Xiaoao's lips trembled slightly, but he did not answer Xiao Yan's question directly. He suddenly asked, "What do you think about Zhu Tianhuo's sacred spirit fire body?" When Xiao Yan heard this, he did not hesitate and said, "It's very strong. If Zhu Tianhuo can cultivate it to the large success stage, he will definitely become a giant." When he said this, Xiao Yan's expression was solemn, without the slightest bit of exaggeration. "Then let me tell you, the Saint Soul Fire physique is nothing compared to the Tyrant Heavenly King physique. The Tyrant Heavenly King physique. That is one of the 3 great war physiques of the divine ancient realm, one of the most powerful physiques in the great world. However, I have never heard of the remaining 2 war physiques in my memory. Thus, it is not an exaggeration to say that the Tyrant Heavenly King physique is the strongest physique in the great world." Quote, 2 inches. The tyrannical heavenly king body represents the pinnacle of strength and qi. It was born to fight. Your prestige power spell has no effect on him at all. The Xiaoao's voice was heavy as it told everything it knew. Its lips trembled slightly. It was still hard to imagine how this legendary physique could appear. After hearing the Xiaoao's words, Xiao Yan raised his brows. He had never thought that this physique would be so strong. Sang Yu, he mumbled to himself and deeply engraved this name in his heart. A physique that even the Xiaoao feared, just how strong was it? Shaking his head, Xiao Yan withdrew his mind from his body and looked at Sang Hao once again. He had heard of this guy's name from Elder Wu and the others. He was a genius of Star Sky Academy, and it just so happened that he could get some useful information out of his mouth. How did the people of Sang clan enter the illusory spirit space? Xiao Yan opened his mouth once again and tried to persuade Sang Hao. "Senior, you misunderstood me. The illusory spirit space was divided equally among the 4 academies. I am a student of the Star Sky Academy. I have no intention of offending you by coming here to cultivate." Sang Hao's heart tightened when he heard the sudden anger in the strange voice. These old monsters' tempers were really hard to understand. Star Sky Academy. Xiao Yan pretended to be deep in thought and replied, "A few days ago, I saw a guy called Mu Yuyang who came from the Tianhuo Academy. That time, there seemed to be a total of 20 people who entered the academy. He has such strength, that really surprised me." Tianhuo Academy? When Sang Hao heard these words, a trace of disdain flashed across his face. After that, he cupped his hands and said, "The so-called Tianhuo Academy is merely a mediocre academy in the star field. I have also heard of that Mu Yuyang. His strength is average. The reason why this academy is able to recruit 20 people, I think it's because there aren't any top students available. I want to pick a few from the ordinary students. Pausing for a moment, Sang Hao smiled complacently and said, although our Star Sky Academy only has 5 people in each trial, we have the potential to become the top students. We are far stronger than the Yunluo. No, the other 3 academies. 5 people. So, the so-called 4 academies competition is the competition between the 5 of you? Upon hearing Sang Hao's words, Xiao Yan sneered, but his voice didn't have the slightest fluctuation as he continued to ask. That's right. Sang Hao straightened his back and said seriously. Interesting. After making some random excuses, Xiao Yan quickly made up his mind. Since only 5 people could enter the Star Sky Academy at a time, then the one who hurt Xuan was undoubtedly one of the 5 people. His target shrunk a lot in an instant. I can see that your bone structure is not bad. You and I can be considered fated. What do you have in your cultivation that you do not know? You can tell me. The next time you come in, I might be able to bestow you with an opportunity. The answer that he wanted was already in his hands. Xiao Yan suddenly had a trace of interest. The strength of this fellow was not bad. It would also bring some benefits to the 4 academies competition. Thank you, senior. Sang Hao's eyes lit up when he heard this, and he said with delight. Most of them were giants from the ancient times, and their strengths were shocking. So, being able to obtain their guidance would absolutely bring boundless benefits. I'm slow-witted. Although I've already reached the 7 Monarch Emperor, if I were to use my movement technique, Monarch skill, then my control over the other Monarch skill would be much weaker. Because of this, the elders of the Academy have explained it many times, but I still can't understand it. I hope Senior can give me some guidance. As he spoke, Sang Hao cupped his fists and said with a sincere expression. Knowing Sang Hao's weakness, Xiao Yan silently nodded and said in a deep voice, I already know what the problem is. If we meet again in the future, I can give you a chance. After saying that, under Xiao Yan's command, the blood eye in the sky poured down and turned into a sea of blood once again. Arg! Sang Hao was startled when he saw the blood eye turn into a sea of blood. He had yet to answer his question, how did it disappear? Deep in the black mist, Xiao Yan looked at Sang Hao who was constantly calling for his senior. He let out a bitter laugh, knowing Sang Hao's weakness. He wouldn't care about what happened next, and the existence of the blood eye didn't respond to Sang Hao at all. Under the teleportation of the blood eye, Xiao Yan appeared outside of the Wu Yin meridian. The black fog filled the sky. If it wasn't for the monarch flame in Xiao Yan's eyes, he wouldn't have been able to sense the surrounding environment. After merging with refining monarch Hai Tianyang, there was a trace of coolness flowing in his eyes, as if he could see more clearly. After the communication with the blood origin seed was cut off, Xiao Yan quickly looked around. He didn't find any trace of anyone. Immediately, he took out the dragon soul bone. The origin chi poured into it, and in an instant, an even deeper darkness gushed out from it. In an instant, a spatial crack appeared in front of Xiao Yan. Without any hesitation, Xiao Yan entered the spatial crack. His body was instantly devoured, and in the next moment, the spatial crack had already disappeared. 3 days later, if we can't find Xiao Yan, Zhu Tianhuo, Su Qingwu, Yuan Tianmu and the 2 of you will replace them. In Realm and Valley, Su Ziyang's face was gloomy, and his eyes were bloodshot. He looked extremely haggard, but his eyes were fixed on the man and woman in front of him, and he spoke in a deep voice. Elder Su, Qingwu and I are only peak of Monarch King warriors. Even if we use our full strength, we can only fight 2 or 3 Monarch Emperor warriors. We can't meet the minimum requirement for this competition. After listening to Su Ziyang's words, Yuan Tianmu spoke with a bitter voice. If it was before, he would have been extremely excited. He would have fought even if it meant risking his life. However, after knowing about the 5 participants of the Star Sky Academy, this feeling had vanished completely. I know. Su Ziyang's face was cold and indifferent, and his voice was emotionless. Besides you, who else has the right to replace you? Tell me, I'll go and find him. This. Yuan Tianmu and Su Qingwu looked at each other and saw the helplessness in each other's eyes. Clenching his teeth, Yuan Tianmu was about to agree when a thunderous voice resounded in everyone's ears. Xiao Yi, didn't you want my life? Come and get it. In the next moment, a flame had already rushed over from the entrance of Realm in Valley. A faint scorch mark appeared wherever it passed. Zhu Tianhuo? Su Ziyang instantly reacted. When he sensed the strength that was revealed, he raised his brows and appeared in midair in a flash. Stop! With a gentle shout, the flame had no choice but to stop in front of Su Ziyang. When the flame dissipated, a human figure was revealed. It was Zhu Tianhuo. You have become a monarch emperor? Seeing the flaming wings flapping behind Zhu Tianhuo's back, Su Ziyang said with an expressionless face. Where's Xiao Yi? Ask him to come out. Zhu Tianhuo didn't have a good impression of Su Ziyang when he saw him. He said in a cold voice. No wonder. It turns out that he gave you the motivation to cultivate. It seems like you have completely mastered the sacred spirit fire body. Su Ziyang chuckled when he heard what Zhu Tianhuo said. He didn't care about Zhu Tianhuo's attitude at all. Unfortunately, he was seriously injured when he returned to the Shao clan to devour the monarch flame. I'm afraid he won't be able to come back anytime soon. Injured? Zhu Tianhuo sneered when he heard that. You can't even wait for such a short period of time. Serves you right. Su Ziyang only smiled and did not explain anything. Just as he was about to speak, an elder rushed over from the entrance of Realm in Valley with great effort. When he saw Su Ziyang, he hurriedly cupped his fists and said, Elder Su, he has made his way here. I have no time to stop him. It's fine. Su Ziyang waved his hand. He didn't care at all. After that, he looked at Zhu Tianhuo and said in a deep voice, You came back just in time. 4 Academies competition. Yunluo Academy needs you. Zhu Tianhuo raised his eyebrows and looked around the realm and valley. Then, he looked at Su Ziyang and said in a cold voice. Where is Xiao Yan?